Okay, we got a show for you today. Okay, who's streaming something good? I want to hear what everybody's streaming. We need a new streaming thing. Actually, we did just start watching Star Trek Below Decks on CBS All Access. We have been fans of the alternative Star Trek shows that they've had on there. And this is a cartoon one about the people who work on the lower decks. And the first one was kind of hilarious. So Love Life. Ooh, I don't know what that's about. Sounds good. Ooh, Silent Witness. All right. These are good. Keep them coming. Of course, we should all be like outside right now because it's nice, although it's awful hot right now. The question is, for those of you just joining us, what are you streaming now? Or what have you just gotten done streaming that you like? Ooh, excellent. This just shows how out of touch I am. I have never heard of any one of those three things. I'm such a geek. Miss Fisher's Murder Mysteries. Is that on Netflix? What is that on? PBS. Ah, excellent. High quality. Okay. Anybody else have something they're streaming right now? Lovecraft. I keep seeing ads for that. Oh yeah, Lee. I remember Love Life Now with Anna Kendrick. I love her. And it's like each episode is a different relationship or something. Yes. Oh, and we have a second for Mrs. Fisher Murder Mysteries. No blood splatter on the white outfit, I found. That's funny. We all need good Shiros right now. Thanks to those of you that posted or sent your happy place pics. You'll see a few of them in the presentation today. That was cool. We had a bit of a staycation last week, stayed around here. Tried to not Zoom too much. Worked on some good knitting. Okay, I'm going to turn off my video for 1 sec and I will be right back with you all. We'll get started in, 8 minutes or so. Enjoy. Hey, everybody. Okay, for 100 folks on with us already, and we are, as you can see, discussing what we're streaming right now. Yes, and The Alienist, I keep seeing, Dave, I keep seeing ads for that too. That actress looks like she does a good job. Anybody growing any good vegetables? We have tomatoes. I today brought for lunch homemade lasagna with made with sauce with tomatoes from the garden, and I did homemade lasagna noodles this weekend, which was amazingly good and not very good for me, but so delicious. We had at least a dozen jars of pickles that John has made from all of the millions of cucumbers. And we've literally taken 3 or 4 bags of like a dozen or 2 dozen each of cucumbers to the local food bank as well. And we still have more jars of pickles than we know what to do with. So it's just this one little corner in the back, and there's this little walled in part of the yard at the president's house that so it keeps the critters mostly out. And so we have that, and then we have 12 pepper plants. So we have 4 jalapeno pepper plants, which are so incredible. And then we just finally, they took 80 or 90 days to ripen these. It's Corno de Toro or something peppers. They're the horns of the bull. They look like bullhorn peppers. And oh, I just had one last night. Finally, it was so good. But it has been, we got the plants in mid-May, and we just finally got something off of one of them. It was like, that is patience. Oh no, Stacy, the squirrels. God, darn those squirrels. And Dan, growing watermelons for the rabbit who lives in your yard. Well, you know, we all are doing our part to support our local wildlife. Oh, interesting. We with the tomatoes, we learned that if you we comb the cat and take little tufts of cat hair and put them around the sides of the tomato plants, and this does seem to keep at least the chipmunks away. Maybe the squirrels too. I don't know if they eat the. Yes, the cucumbers are overwhelming. Okay, up over 200 here and another 75 on YouTube. Hi, YouTube friends. Ooh, yes, gazpacho. I have already done one batch of gazpacho with tomatoes and cukes and peppers. Yes, very good. It's one of our go-to way when the tomatoes become overwhelming. You make a giant batch of gazpacho or pasta sauce. Nothing like just pulling veggies right out of the garden and into the dinner, you know. It's the best. Now I'm making myself hungry. Oh, fruit trees. I hear the peaches are doing well this year. I used to have citrus trees when I lived in Arizona, and it's so awesome. Grapefruit and lemons and oranges. Homemade pesto is the best. Chris Wilby. Delish. Okay, it's 2 o'clock. We're going to give folks another minute or so, and then we will get started. We have a longer session today because we just wanted to walk everybody through the details. And so hopefully folks will hang with us. Again, we're going to give people another minute or 2 to join in. Hello everyone. Hey, Coach Kelly. A lot of faculty with us, wonderful. Now I know technically you got like 2 or 3 more days, yeah, until Monday, technically. Hard to believe it's already mid-August. It feels like D-term just ended. What happened? What happened? Okay. Still looks like we've got people coming in at a reasonable clip, so I'm just going to give it a few more seconds. So we break 300 here on Zoom. Get a few more. Over 100 on YouTube, so great to be with everyone. So let's go ahead and get started. So this is going to be a little bit different than prior town halls that we've done, in that one, we've allocated a little more time because, you know, we're kind of right down to it here, and we just want to make sure that we're giving you a level of detail that's useful, and also, you know, frankly, probably had enough of me talking at this point, and really would, you know, hearing directly from the folks who are really in so many ways leading the efforts across the various topics on campus. So we've picked out some of the topics that have been the subject of kind of repeated inquiries and questions and concerns, and going to try and unpack those at sort of maybe one more level of detail than we usually do. And then we're going to just leave lots of time for questions. So that's the goal. Also, this time we've got a bunch of folks on with us who are going to try and answer at least some of your questions in the Q&A box as they come up. So feel free to pose questions at any time, and somebody may jump in and answer them. So and then obviously if there are, you know, kind of threads and other big topics or questions that we don't answer that way, we'll do them during the Q&A part of the session. So a little bit different this time. And hello again to our YouTube colleagues that are watching streaming. You can't see the Q&A, but we'll try and make sure that at least the topics are raised in the discussion part of the Q&A section, or that you can jump off YouTube and log into Zoom if you like, because we do have space here for folks. So can we go to the next slide? So here we are, sitting in mid-August, and we're going to talk today about our status, where we're headed, and what our plans are to open. We're going to talk a little bit more about the broader context. I see that someone has posted a question about that broader context. I'm going to hit that one head on here in just a minute. And, you know, I think it's a good topic of conversation, and I'm going to wrap this up at the end by talking about the things that give me confidence going forward. I do know that it's a challenging time, and that it's a dynamic time, that we're seeing lots of institutions change their plans. It's a time when I'm more confident than ever in our own plans, but understand completely that we are in unprecedented territory here, and so this is the time to be in that discussion. So let's go ahead and go forward into the conversation, and again, starting as we always do with our North Star, which is about our community and keeping us safe and healthy. It's about serving our students, supporting our faculty and staff. It's about keeping our WPI family together and treating one another with the care and respect that we all expect of one another, and serving our broader community. It is about serving. I'm wearing today, I don't know if you can see it, I'm going to get like super close to this is one of the things that we're doing, is who do I wear a mask for? You'll hear when we talk a little bit about student compliance that, you know, one of the things we're doing is a whole campaign around who are you wearing your mask for? How are you going to help keep others safe? And for me, I wear my mask for WPI students. This to me is about helping keep WPI have the ability to have students on campus. And that's the reason that I am taking the safety protocols so incredibly seriously. If you go to the next slide, last time we started with some breathing. It was a time of it felt like very heightened stress. I think in many ways that stress is still there. I absolutely get that. But we talked some about people's happy places, and some of you will recognize your own photos in here that you sent me from trips to your own happy place or your dreamed of happy place. And again, I just want to, we're not going to do the same thing we did last time, again, with a great kudos to Kate Moncrief for, sharing her deep breathing exercise with us and her expertise in sort of groundedness. But it's really important that we all do keep self-care front and center as we go forward here, that we acknowledge our fears and normalize those, that we learn. And again, the goal of today's session is to help everybody learn about what our plans are in detail. What's it going to be like to take care of yourselves and really take control of those things that you can, and then to remember why we're all here, which is about serving our students. So thank you for the happy place inputs. That was really exciting to see. Next. So I want to just do I'm going to just do a couple of slides, and then we're going to dive into the other speakers today. So status, let's start with that. We are on track with reopening plans. We just reaffirmed yesterday at CERT that we are on track. We are staying the course and we are ready to go. We've been tracking risk areas since June, and we now have all risk areas green except for 2 yellows and 1 yellow/green. So, and nothing red. And so we are ready. And the team, and this isn't just me saying this, the team feels very strongly that we have done everything that we can do to be ready to go. And we'll talk more about that today, and you can obviously judge for yourself. But for weeks now, for months now, we've been meeting as a CERT team with dozens of people from across the campus, and it's not, I'm on there, and there's people different levels of the organization in there, from all parts of the organization in there, and we are in agreement. And I again will come back at the end here and talk about why I have great confidence in our ability to go forward here. So we are going to open. We are going to be partially populated, and things are going to be different. And you'll hear about that more today. And that we all have a critical role to play in making that possible. That's who do I wear my mask for, and what am I doing in terms of symptom checking and testing and hand washing and staying distanced and all those things that we're going to need to do that are actually really proven to dramatically slow the spread of COVID-19. So we've got this panel of experts here today who have been deep into this work for months now, and so that you can hear directly from them. And the other thing I want to do, I'm not going to send you a big long message, actually, it turns out, after this session, because we're talking about so many details and you're getting a lot of messages more directly from the folks whose areas are, from talent and inclusion, from student affairs for students, from other parts, from academic affairs. But I urge you to continue to check the reopening site. That's the We Are WPI site. You can get to it from any website in the WPI family, from up at the top there. And you can look up all of this stuff. There's a ton of information there, and I really want to send people there. There's an employee toolkit there. There's all kinds of other details. So please do check on that. Okay, so I just want to do one slide on the next slide about the broader context. And I'll tell you about what this picture is here on the right first. So this is Massachusetts, obviously. There's a lot of different ways to look at the data. I had a graph in here at one point. I could have put the new state map with different cities highlighted in different colors, which Worcester is now yellow, which we can talk about. But I thought this was a fairly simple way to look at the data. And this I downloaded just yesterday. This is from last week. This is different EMS regions of Massachusetts, emergency management response regions. And we are in region 2. And if you look at the new cases per 100,000 residents in region 2, it is the lowest in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. So, and the Commonwealth of Massachusetts has a very low case rate. Our test positivity rate in the state is well below 2% at this point. The number of cases is steady. and relatively low, in spite of the fact that now in Massachusetts, where literally a month ago they were doing 59,000 tests a week, and now last week I think they did 90,000 tests. So our testing rate is going way up. And while we did see like a tiny rise in cases in the state, that has even come back down over the last week as well. And so if we are going to open, we live in a state within which that should be possible, right? Like you could, I think, really question in some of these parts of the country where the virus is raging, the idea of reopening. But here in Massachusetts, we really have a very low background rate of cases. Not zero, and it's not going to be zero for quite some time. And so I think that's the other question one has to ask yourself, is what, if we're going to be living with this virus for some period of time, how are we going to learn to live and learn in that environment? And really that is what our plans are all about trying to make happen. And then just to say something about the higher education landscape itself, somebody mentioned again in the chat that we've seen several of our neighboring institutions, I call it flipping. They flipped this week, taken their plans to have students on campus and flipped to not having students on campus. The Holy Cross is the only one that really made a big change in their plans. Assumption had a little delay of their start, but they already have students on campus, so I don't really understand what they're doing. Becker was frankly never really going to bring students back, I don't believe. And so it's really Holy Cross that had a big change here. They have a special challenge in that it's a long story, but their residential environment is different than ours. Their student profile is different than ours. And frankly, their capacity to do sort of really science and engineering based planning is different than ours. So I get that probably is making people nervous, but the things that they're worried about, we have managed. Nationally, what I would say, again, we hear about the one-offs, right? And I just went yesterday and looked at this. Davidson College has this thing called the C2I project, and they've got a dashboard about all the colleges in the country. You can go there and look up any college. There's 3,000 of them or so listed there. And what you see is that, and they've got them categorized in some different ways, but they're sort of like mostly or fully online, or there's hybrid and in person. And nationally, colleges are about evenly split about how they're approaching the fall. And here in Massachusetts, they don't quite have data for every college, but for those that they do, a higher number of them are hybrid or in person. And frankly, we're aware of and are tracking very closely colleges that are already welcoming students back. UMass Medical School has had students back for a month. You can actually go on the UMass Medical School website and see their dashboard for their testing program. They've performed, I think last time I looked was a couple of days ago, 8,000 tests, have had 4 or 6 positives out of 8,000. So not 1%, but less than 0.1% positives, which is great. BU is back, having students come back. At last time I talked to the president of BU, which was a couple of days ago, they tested a couple thousand students, no positive cases. So again, the early indicators are that the protections, the programs, the safety measures we're putting in place are serving us well. Will it stay that way? I don't think we know, but we've got, I think, a real shot here, and I really feel like we owe it to our students to take that shot. And I want to share with you now, through the speakers that are coming up, kind of where we are, what's our status, what's been happening these last few weeks, and then we can have more discussion about where we are. So next slide is for me to get to hand off. And again, a lot of these things are, we're kind of coming to the end of our planning process here and really implementing, and obviously we've been implementing all the way along, but you're going to get to hear the very latest status from the frontline experts. So on the academic side, that's Art Heimricher, and Art's going to jump in and talk a little bit about academics. Thanks, Art.
Hey, good afternoon, folks. Can you jump ahead to the next slide? One more to go. Okay, so this is basically nope, went too far. Can you go back one? This is basically a thank you to facilities, and you'll hear more from Eric Beatty in just a couple of minutes, but the classrooms have been de-densified. They've been analyzed extensively. There's a picture there of Kennicott Hall, which goes from capacity 144 down to 33. The thing that I want to emphasize here is that the facilities folks have been working through campus. If you were on campus today, you would see desks moving out of Stratton Hall over to other spaces. They're de-densifying, they're marking the chairs where no one should be sitting. And there's a lot of new signage around campus. Okay, next slide. Okay, the main point I wanted to make here is this is basically a description of what faculty have been doing starting in D term and then over the summer. It's been wonderful to watch a whole lot of design, build, test, and learn going on. More than 180 faculty participated in online pedagogy workshops this summer with the instructional design staff. And the one point I wanted to leave you all with on this slide is Christine Sherry, Paul Riley, and I had a welcome session yesterday for the class of 2024 students. We had a couple of hundred of them on a Zoom call. And it was one of the most fun 90 minutes I've had in a long time. They had many questions, incredibly WPI polite, but they are very excited about coming to campus, and they are very excited and they're ready to adapt. I was very impressed, as I usually am, by WPI students. Next slide. So this is some work that Casey Wall led, identifying student intentions for the fall. Do they plan to be on campus or do they plan to be remote? On the undergraduate side, we're about 86% undergrad. On the grad side, about 86% on campus. On the grad side, 46% on campus. The point that I want to add here is that one of the things working with Casey and IT and the registrar, if you're a faculty member, you can go look at your class list now and you can see which of your students will be on campus and which will be remote. So that's actually attached to the student name on your class list. So if you want to see who will be there, you can now see that. Next slide. And this is where we stand on the courses for the fall. We are about almost 80% of the undergraduate courses will have an in-person component. They're either hybrid or in-person completely. On the grad side, the vast majority will be online, about 89%. Just to put some numbers behind this, there are 631 undergraduate classes. Out of that, there are 19 undergraduate classes that are online in A term or B term. The grad side, there's about 177 classes. So that's my rapid run through. There's still a lot of work to be done by a lot of people, but I would point to the registrar's office and the advising office, but I really am confident that we'll be ready, especially after I met some of the class of 2024. Thank you.
Great. That's great to hear, Art, that you had such a great interaction with our incoming students. Maybe also mention that we will be reopening registration for them next week, right?
Yep. So registration will reopen on Monday. I did get lots of questions from students about what if they're on wait lists, and basically we're working on that with advising and we'll get them into classes. The thing that I didn't mention, and this, I think Stephanie will enjoy this, the session with the students on Wednesday was wonderful. I'm meeting parents tomorrow. I'm expecting a slightly different experience, but I'll let you know.
That's great. You see, you've got a couple of questions here in the chat, Art, which maybe you can have a look at as we keep pressing forward, or in the Q&A, sorry, about Canvas or a banner or something. Okay, so let's go on to the next slide, which is going to tell us who is up next. So again, to build on what Art just said about the amazing work that our facilities team has done in classrooms, Eric Beatty is going to give you just that next level of detail, including some very important potty talk. So there you go. Eric, you're up.
Thanks, Lori. Hi, everyone. And thanks, Art, for the compliment. Yeah, I'd also like to give a little shout out to our facilities team. The whole team has been bringing a flexible mindset to work since March, when the campus essentially closed down to most other people. They've adapted every day to new changes, unexpected things. They've been problem solvers. They've been meeting every challenge that's been thrown at them, and are working hard. And our campus is ready to reopen. And so I'm so proud of them and want to thank them for their effort. We can go to the next slide, please, which talks about some overall steps that we've taken. So one of the biggest tasks that we do every summer is preparing the residence halls for the next year. This year was particularly challenging, and I want to also thank the residential services team that really did a tremendous job of developing a plan for how to get the students to move their stuff out of the residence halls from last year. And so thanks to them, our team was able to get in, do our work, and it's great to be on the home stretch with that effort. And the residence halls are essentially ready to go. Similarly, the academic buildings, the administration buildings, and the student life buildings on campus, our crews have been at work in them all summer, making sure the buildings are operational and clean, and they are ready to go as well. The daily enhanced cleaning of high-touch surfaces is our new mode of operation for going forward. We've adapted our cleaning practices to include higher levels of disinfection with high-grade cleaning products, which includes fogging of spaces every night with a disinfecting mist. So we've really changed our game there quite a bit, and we know that we're following best practices with cleaning. When you are back into buildings, you'll notice a lot of informational signage installed everywhere. This is really meant to help guide you to one-way entrances and exits, one-way stairwells where we're able to have them in certain buildings, helpful reminders about maintaining social distancing, and reminders about cleaning your own workspace and your work environment and looking after your own personal well-being. So there's a lot of helpful signage out there. We hope it helps. We've also installed cleaning stations and hand sanitizer in public areas near the entrances and in classrooms. So these products are out there for your use to help you clean your individual workspaces before and after use and throughout the day. We've also installed or are installing a lot of plexiglass barriers. The count is somewhere over 200 at this point, primarily at service points and reception areas, but also, as we'll see when we go into some details about classrooms, we're also installing plexiglass barriers in classrooms. We have a major order scheduled to arrive tomorrow, so that's the last installment, and those will go in pretty quickly. Drinking fountains were also identified as a source of concern for transmission. So we've disconnected drinking fountains in the corridors, but we have left the touchless water bottle filling stations active, and we want everybody to stay hydrated this semester. And we're trying to encourage as much outdoor activity as we can. That's a healthy, safe environment. So we're adding seating. We've installed 4 tents, 2 on the quad, and 2 on the campus lawn and near Higgins House. And we're adding seating throughout a lot of different places on campus. We're shooting for approximately 200 new outdoor seats to begin with. And if we need more, we'll try to figure out where to put them. Okay, we can move to the next slide, please. Thank you. So in terms of readiness for the classrooms and teaching labs, we've developed a layered approach to classroom safety. There's no individual layer that offers a silver bullet for safety, but they work together, and they include things like reducing the occupancy of classrooms, and Art talked about that. I'll show a little bit more about that. Face coverings in the classroom are very important. WPI's robust testing program plays into overall safety on campus. Our cleaning practices and ventilation and filtration of the air inside buildings. So these are some photos of classrooms in Salisbury, and it shows the reduced seating capacities. These are not the elbow to elbow rooms that we have grown accustomed to. You can see their people will be quite spread out. You can also see the plexiglass barriers at the teaching station and cleaning stations in the rooms. So again, a number of steps taken in classrooms. And if we want to go to the next slide, I'll go through a few more details on classroom readiness. Thank you. The reduced occupancies that we've talked about are based on a 6-foot social distancing criteria, widely used in the United States. Classroom occupancies are actually reduced to somewhere between 20% and 50% of their normal occupancies. It depends on the layout of the classroom, whether the seats are fixed or movable, and the overall density of the room, but it's quite a reduction in the number of people that will be in each room. We've removed the extra chairs that won't be used where the chairs are loose. Where the chairs are bolted to the ground, we're installing "Do not sit here" stickers on the ones that shouldn't be used. So we think it's going to be pretty clear and pretty easy to remain socially distanced. In addition to that, IT has installed lecture capture in all classrooms and has wireless microphones available for faculty to check out for the year so they don't have to share with others. The teaching stations have, as we said, the plexiglass barriers installed. We've installed the cleaning stations and the signage reminders for healthy behavior. And ventilation systems have all been looked at. We commissioned a mechanical engineering expert in this field to review the systems in buildings and make recommendations to us for best practices for ventilation and filtration. So what we found is that 34 classrooms have ventilation systems that provide ventilated air to them. And 11 classrooms utilize operable windows for ventilation. That's primarily at Caven and Stratton, Washburn, Salisbury. You know, some of the rooms in these buildings do have ventilation systems, some don't, so it varies by room. Also on the teaching lab side, we have 20 teaching labs that have mechanical ventilation systems in good shape, and 6 teaching labs utilize operable windows for ventilation. On this slide, ventilation is really one part of a layered approach to safety in the classrooms. And the goal is to reduce the sharing of exhaled droplets and aerosols by ventilation or filtration. So the buildings with mechanical ventilation have been inspected, maintained, serviced, including changing the filters in those systems. Where we can, we're upgrading the filters to a higher efficiency filter to capture finer particles. And we're also adjusting systems where possible to increase the ventilation rate per person. Those rooms without mechanical ventilation are having the windows inspected and repaired if necessary to assure that they're in good operating condition and can be opened and closed. Some rooms will provide great natural ventilation by opening the windows if they have windows on opposing walls that creates a good cross ventilation effect. Where that's not as strong, we will install window fans that will move air, pull air out of the room to enhance ventilation without turbulence. And where needed, we will install HEPA filtration units in these rooms to filter the air to remove particulates. And just a note on that, we've identified a dozen or so rooms that are probably likely candidates for these filtration units. We've ordered far more units than are needed initially in case other needs pop up. And some of those units have begun to arrive, so we're pretty excited about that. We also had a great meeting this week with some faculty experts from different departments across campus that helped us look at our plans, see what we've done, where we're headed. We had a great discussion with some really interesting and great feedback, and we appreciate their willingness to get involved. We really thank them for that. And we're also turning our attention to other buildings that have a larger amount of traffic through them, such as the library and the rec center and the campus center. We'll be doing similar work and exercises in all those buildings. So we can go to the next slide, please. Thank you. This provides some context about bathrooms. There's been a fair amount of discussion about our public bathrooms. And I'm clearly not a health expert, but these are some excerpts from someone who is, Dr. Ross from Harvard Medical School. And he talks about risk factors in the context of public bathrooms and behaviors that can reduce that risk. So I would encourage you to check out his site. To me, the basic message is, we spend a relatively short amount of our time in bathrooms. It's wise to stay socially distanced. And as you see, we're reducing bathroom capacity to help achieve that. Obviously wear your face covering and wash your hands. So we can move on to I think my last slide to go through some details about bathrooms. This is the anticipated potty talk that we were waiting for. We've reduced capacities by looking at each bathroom and determining, based on a 6-foot capacity, can a bathroom support multiple people? The outcome is that the right decision is to make most bathrooms on campus single-user bathrooms. And we've made the decision to convert 108 out of 127 total bathrooms to single-user bathrooms. There will be signage to make that clear, and it should work very well. We've also made the decision to make them gender inclusive, meaning they're not designated as men's rooms or women's rooms, therefore either or anyone to use, and that will help alleviate and make sure that there's enough bathroom capacity in buildings. We are pretty confident that even with this reduction in occupancy, we will have enough bathroom capacity to meet our demand. Remembering that buildings in general will be approximately 50% less populated at any given time than they normally would have been. We've also checked the exhaust systems, verified that they're running, setting them to run continuously to make sure there's air turnover in the bathrooms. There's been concerns raised about electric hand dryers, so we've disconnected those in the bathrooms that have them, installed paper towel dispensers. Those, by not having those run, it will help reduce or eliminate turbulence of air in the bathrooms. And lastly, we've installed toilet lids in some bathrooms. There's been discussion about toilet plume, an interesting term, and whether that creates a safety hazard. So to address that, the toilet lids can be used to prevent plume from rising into the air on their own. So those are the steps we've taken in bathrooms. I know that's very exciting, and I think that's the end of my component here. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Eric. I have to say the facilities team deserves enormous kudos. If you haven't yet been back on campus, you just can't imagine how different it is actually. And it's still changing every day. I see, and for your great work, Eric, you've been rewarded for with many questions in the chat that you can about specific buildings or specific rooms and such, which maybe you can start typing away on a bit while we continue talking, but it's just been an extraordinary amount of work and with a team, as somebody said in the Q&A, that was impacted by our early retirement program. And we are in fact doing some backfilling there in the custodial staff, very much needed. So, and yes, you can now proudly say that you have presented to the WPI community all about bathrooms. So there you go. Great work. Let's go on to the next slide. Thank you. So there were already some questions about testing, and we've talked about it before, but it's such an important topic. I want us to dive into it today. And Emily can give us the up to the minute update as well. We've already been going through our first set of testing, getting those first negative results back. It's all going extremely well. Incredibly proud of that team. So Emily Perlow is going to talk about that.
All right, thanks so much. If you want to bump to that next slide. Excellent. Before I dig into talking about the different kinds of testing, I think those of you who've been on a previous town hall have seen this version of the slide before. I want to emphasize something that if you do anything today, I want to make sure that if you haven't already gone into the Learning Academy, which is accessible from the Talent and Inclusion website, that you go on there and you sign all appropriate waivers. And those need to be done at least 24 hours prior to your first testing appointment so that we can validate that those have been done and make sure that then your data is uploaded into our testing system. So please, 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 if you haven't done that, we'd encourage you to do that. That would be right now for if your department is in pathway 0, 1, 2, and 3 for folks. So you'll get an email with that information if you haven't received it yet. Once you do it right away. That way you know it's taken care of. As we've talked about before, we have a number of different kinds of tests. They're all the same tests, but we're kind of conceptualizing them a little differently. So the first is a one-time pre-arrival test. And we're requiring all students who live on campus in residence halls and in fraternity and sorority houses to be tested prior to their arrival. We're also going to be testing all students right when they come to campus. So starting the week of the 24th, all students and all faculty and staff coming to campus will participate in an onboarding test. For many of us who are working here on campus, we started doing that this week. And so folks from this point forward will then be tested in a routine testing process through which folks will be tested once or twice a week. And I'll talk a little bit about those populations again in just a moment. And then finally, we have symptomatic testing. And that's when someone is exhibiting COVID symptoms. Our students in that case would be reporting their symptoms through the symptom tracker, which I'll talk about in a little bit. And then they would be contacted by health services. And if they're exhibiting symptoms, they would be tested through health services. Faculty and staff, you would go and contact your PCP, and in consultation with your PCP, they would decide if you should be tested. Go ahead and bump to the next slide for me, please. So some of you are thinking to yourself, when can I be tested on campus? And these are the steps that happen prior to that occurring. First, your office has an approved reopening plan through CERT. You have to be personally slated to return on that plan. So if you're not sure if you're coming back to campus or not, please talk with your supervisor. You must complete the trainings in the Learning Academy. I may say this 2 more times while I'm talking. So very, very important and a critical task for everyone. And you have to sign all those needed waivers. Also a critical task. Once all of those things are done, then please follow the instructions and make sure to book your testing appointment. And booking that appointment is quite easy, and I'll talk about that in just a moment. Next slide. All right, so some folks have been asking, well, am I supposed to be tested twice a week or once a week? How frequently should I be tested? And here's how we're thinking about that. So we've got Group A. Group A folks will be tested twice a week. And these are employees who have high contact and close contact with students. So those are folks like campus police, health services, other folks who might be having really close contact on a regular basis with students. If we have high risk students or faculty or staff coming to campus, we can also work to incorporate those folks into the testing process. And additionally, all students who are living in spaces that have community bathrooms. So in this case, it's campus residence halls with a corridor style with the bathroom down the hall, and also fraternity and sorority residential spaces, and then varsity athletics due to the close contact of varsity practicing. Next would be Group B. Those folks are going to be tested once a week. Most folks on this call, you're going to fall within this category. These are employees who have moderate or limited close contact with students, and then all other students in all other housing environments would be tested in Group B, so once a week. And then we have Group C, and those are folks who are living off campus and taking classes fully remotely, and also employees who are working remotely. You would not be tested. So here you see our testing schedule. And I'm going to show you a couple of images of what the testing site looks like in just one moment. But we're going to be offering a pretty regular schedule, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Thursday. and it'll be 10:30 to 1:30 and then 2:30 to 5. So most folks can find some time during that time block to come for a 15-minute time slot. It moves very quickly, and our expectation is that folks would be able to get in and get out within that 15 minutes. There's a couple of very high volume weeks where we might see folks that take a little bit longer, but we're not expecting more than about 20 minutes max. And then Wednesdays, you'll see we're offering an early slot for those early risers, and also to help capture the folks who work a shift that's different than a typical 8 to 5 shift. You can see here on the left of your slide, we want to show you that we're going to be ramping up pretty quickly. So we were expecting to do about 1,000 tests this week. By next week, we'll be doing about 4,500, and these are 4,000, and these are by the time we get to week 3, we're looking at 8,200 tests a week. So a vast majority of our community, everybody's getting tested weekly. A good chunk of folks are getting tested twice a week. So we'll have a good confidence in our community in terms of what any possible infection rate could be, and we'll be detecting that very quickly if we do have a positive in our community. So how do you schedule tests? We mentioned, we've talked a little bit in prior town halls about a WPI app. So you can schedule testing using the WPI app starting on 8/17. You can go onto that WPI app and you'll see, as you see it in the image on the far right, there'll be a link for COVID testing. So you can click right on that and you can schedule your testing. We're going to ask you that you select a day and you book your test for all of A term, and you keep it on the same day. So if you choose to be tested, I was tested on Monday this week. So if you choose to be tested on Monday, stick with that Monday slot. You can move around during the day if your schedule doesn't quite align, but do try to stick with that day. So if you tend to take a lot of Fridays off, for example, maybe Friday's not a good testing day for you. So think about what makes the most sense for your schedule and try to stick to those days. If you have to make up a test, you absolutely can. You need to make sure that if you have to cancel that appointment, that you book a test, ideally in that same day if possible, but the next day following at least. Additionally, the symptom tracker, which you also see in the image on the right, is something we're going to be asking the community to complete as well on a daily basis. So if you're coming to campus at any point in time, even if you're working remotely that day, we're going to ask you to just make it part of your daily routine. You get up, you brush your teeth, you fill out the symptom tracker, and it's just a couple of quick questions. It literally will take you about 10 seconds, and you can check off that you're feeling great and that you're working remotely if you happen to be working remotely that day, but just so that we know how folks are doing. And if we have someone who's exhibiting symptoms, that we're able to make sure we get in and start cleaning those spaces and responding appropriately if that takes place. That symptom tracker is going to start on 8/24. All right, so some of you were asking, well, what is testing gonna look like? Here's a great photo that really captures what it looks like. As I mentioned before, when I was tested on Monday, walked right in and was able to follow the steps, which are on the next slide. And so I'll walk you through that process. So once again, third time's a charm. Sign your waiver at least 24 hours before coming to your testing. Make sure that you schedule your appointment using the WPI app or the We Are WPI website starting on 8/17. Oh, you're going to arrive to Harrington Auditorium. When you get there, we have partnered with a third-party group, Triumvirate Environmental, who's fabulous, and they will be there to greet you and show you where to go. And so you want to make sure you bring your WPI ID. You'll have a chance to swipe that ID, and that will help us know that you're in the system and ready to go. You'll then be directed to a table where an observer will help guide you through the process. We also have step-by-step instructions right in front of you on the table. So if you are a visual person and you want to look at those instructions, please definitely do that. You'll be instructed to sanitize your hands, open a tube, take out a swab your nose. And I want to emphasize, as many of you have heard before, this is not the deep nasal swab. This is just a front of the nose type swab. You'll swab both nostrils, and then you'll insert it into the tube. And then that tube is sent to our testing partner who will process those results. Right now, we're expecting results. Typically, we'll talk about 48 hours, but right now we're seeing results as quick as 9 to 22 hours. So we expect we'll see, as we have some higher volumes, that result will be right around 24 hours. go ahead and pop to the next slide for me. We'll talk a little bit about what happens once you've tested. So you take your test, and then within 48 hours max, but as I said before, closer to 24 is what we're seeing, you'll have an email. If you're negative, you'll have an email in your inbox, and you'll see an image here on the slide of what that would look like, and it will tell you that your test is negative. If you have a positive test, or sometimes your test can't be read, there's an error with processing it. If that's the case, WPI Health Services will reach out to you and talk with you about your next steps. Now I want to talk a little bit about the support team that we've brought on to really help us manage this. Because as you can imagine, administering 8,200 tests in a week is not an easy feat. And so right now we have a health behaviors team who's been working all summer to work on the protocols and processes. And we've brought these folks on who are starting this week and next week to help us manage the ongoing process as students arrive. So Lisa Perlman will join us as the Director of Health Services. As many of you know, Regina Roberto retired after many years here at WPI, and we're thrilled to have Lisa join our team. Chloe Green will serve as testing coordinator, and she'll be helping to manage all of the testing processes, making sure folks are following through on appointments, following up with folks who have a special circumstance that they want to talk about. And then Jennifer Hapgood-White has joined us as the isolation quarantine coordinator, and she'll be working with students that may need to be in isolation or may need to move to quarantine, and I'll talk about that in just one moment. So isolation, contact tracing, and quarantine are words we hear a lot, and so I want to make sure we're all on the same page. Isolation occurs when someone has tested positive, and we want to separate that person from others who are negative at the time. And so what we're going to do with students, if we have a positive student on our campus, is that we're going to help guide that student to designated isolation space if they live on campus that we have here on the campus. Or if a student can safely go home, we are encouraging them wherever possible to do that. Students who live in apartments are encouraged to isolate in their apartment or to go to their home if they're able. All students, regardless of where they are, will receive regular check-ins from nursing staff, and we'll be making sure that their needs are met. So if a student, for example, in a class needs some support or an accommodation, ideally they're accessing a lot of their content remotely, but if let's say they're going to miss a lab, our academic advising staff will be reaching out to help ask for some flexibility in that situation. If you're a faculty or staff member and you test positive, we're going to instruct you to go home and isolate and follow the directions of your PCP and the local public health authority wherever you live. And you'll be provided with those instructions through your PCP or the Department of Public Health. So once someone tests positive on our campus, the next step we would follow would be contact tracing. And that's going to occur once we have that positive. And we're going to be trying to figure out, well, where has that person been and who have they had close contact with? A close contact, and I'll talk about this in just a few moments, a close contact is not necessarily someone that you just walked by in a hallway. A close contact is going to be someone that you were in contact with it for an extended period of time within 6 feet. Students, if they're identified as a close contact, they're going to then be advised to quarantine. Faculty and staff, those contacts are going to be done by your local public health. So if you live outside of the city of Worcester, that local public health could be a different city. And they're going to be getting in contact with you through their contact tracers and try to talk with you a little bit about where you've been and who you've been in contact with. And then those folks would be subsequently contacted and advised to quarantine. So quarantine separates and restricts the movement of those close contacts. And the goal there is to help, if someone has come in close contact and has been exposed, to ensure that they, while they're asymptomatic, may not expose anyone else. And so in the case of students will be encouraged to go home wherever possible, if they can safely do so, and quarantine at home or in their apartment off campus. Fraternity and sorority members will be able to safely quarantine in their houses as well. We have guidelines that allow for clear instructions about how a student can safely quarantine when others are living in the space. And then faculty and staff, you'll be advised also to quarantine at home in consultation with your PCP and the Department of Public Health. So we've gotten a lot of questions about, well, am I a close contact? What happens if someone tests positive in my class? Or if I am working in an administrative capacity and I greet a student who walks into the office, will that make me a close contact? So you are a close contact And you can see the sort of some 3 scenarios that you're within 6 feet of a person with COVID-19 for 15 minutes or more. And I want to clarify, the wearing of face coverings often reduces that likelihood, even in those settings. If you come in direct contact with secretions, or you're living or caring for someone with COVID-19. So for example, if you're riding in the car with someone who's COVID positive, you're probably a close contact. If you are dining in close proximity to someone with no face masks, you could be considered a close contact. You are not a close contact if you're in the same classroom or office with someone, as long as you're following the safety protocols. You're wearing your face coverings, you're making sure you're staying within outside of 6 feet, you're avoiding long, prolonged contact. If you're following those guidelines, you are likely not a close contact. So walking by someone in the hallway, standing in front of someone in a socially distanced line, those things would not necessarily make you a close contact. So if you are a close contact, you'll be contacted and told that you're being considered to be a close contact. So if you don't get any contact, you're not a close contact. And at that time, you're going to be advised to stay home and, monitor your health, take your temperature. If you exhibit symptoms, contact your physician or health services if you're a student. If you're not identified as a close contact, you will not receive any contact, and you should just continue to follow the routine protocols that you follow on a regular basis. So do that symptom tracker in the morning, make sure you keep your regular testing schedule.
Great. I think that's it for you, Emily. Is that right?
It is.
That was a lot, though. I think there is that little confusion about if you don't get contacted, you're not a contact. So let me just try that one again, which is if you don't get a call from someone. So first of all, if you see a WPI number coming up on your phone, you should really always answer it. It could be a couple of different things, right? It could be, hey, you might have been exposed. I want to talk to you about whether you were in close contact with a person who tested positive. Or we have reason to believe that you did. So be sure you answer that call, or any kind of Worcester call, actually. And also, and we've heard of a few cases of this already, there are 3 possible outcomes for a test. One is you're negative, and they're all negative so far, except a very tiny amount. 2, you're positive, no positives yet for us. And 3, it was either unreadable or something was funky in your test. So you might have to go and do another test. And in that case, health services is going to call you too. So definitely be watching your phone for those calls from health services and answer those. Did I get that okay, Emily?
Yes, that might, the retest may be via email. So do check your email or answer your phone call.
Yeah. So again, it's not totally perfect. Some fraction of a percent or a percent of tests might need to be rerun in any given batch. And that's one of the reasons they have you blow your nose when you go in to take a test, because if you get your tube full of snot, again, because as if toilets weren't enough, we should talk about snot too. If your tube is full of snot, that doesn't work. So anyway, thank you so much, Emily, for the discussion about testing, isolation, and quarantine. There are some questions in the chat for you about that. And so you can follow up there. And then we're going to turn it over to Kristen Coffey to talk a bit about our return to work processes. Hey, Kristen.
All right, thank you. All right, we can go to the next slide, please. All right, returning to work, a new normal. The new normal will look a little different, along with what Eric has said, and we've been talking about the enhanced cleanings, the signage. There are also new policies and processes that we need to follow to help keep the campus safe. Many were discussed, so the testing, which we got great detail on. Thank you very much for all of that, Emily. The enhanced cleaning, the study spaces. What hasn't been mentioned yet, there's a reservation system for meals now. So employees are encouraged to bring your lunches, leaving more campus dining space for students. So they can't really leave. So if we can bring our own lunches, that would be helpful. And a decision was recently made that the Sports and Rec Center is going to be reserved for students only. And these are what the signs look throughout the campus. So next slide, please. Okay, so we are going to be bringing back over 1,000 faculty and staff to campus. This has been a very slow, thoughtful, methodical process to ensure safely coming back to campus. That's why we've had the 0 to 3 pathways are making their way back. It's a slow re-entry because each department coming in needed to submit a re-entry plan where they had to be thinking about how am I going to keep the department, the campus, the faculty and staff safe. There were things they included about social distancing, the cleaning protocols. How am I going to staff at 50% occupancy? What kind of schedules are going to be done? So all this had to be thought about before it was approved, and we moved on to the next stage, which was once people were approved to be on campus, there was safety training that everybody needed to take. This was updated new training. I know many people who have been on campus as emergency responders or in the labs took the EHS training. This is an updated one with a few more details and more policies. We wanted to make sure everybody really understood the policies we had on campus and the practices we were putting in place for safety and everything like that. Reiterate again what Emily just said, testing waivers. They are out there and they're critical in the first step in getting people back on campus and being tested safely. You know, regularly testing, maintaining that constant routine. I know a big piece of what we have heard is confidentially around that, what information is being shared. This is a priority area. Your health information is not shared. It's kept in a very small group that has to maintain the health management of the university. There's new safety policies that we just talked about, you know, wearing a face covering, social distancing, checking your symptoms. So this is what it looks like to be on campus and what we're putting out there to make sure we all are safe and can remain open. Next slide, please. So this is a snapshot of what is available to everybody on campus. We understand there's a lot of information, a lot of anxiety about coming back to campus. What we've done is we've worked with marketing, we've heard your concerns, and we tried to put some checklists together that will help people feel more comfortable coming back to campus, knowing what to do in certain situations. Many have received this, but if you were tested positive, how do I plan to come back to campus? Checklist before coming back to campus. Many have, we've been off for a bit and we're coming back. There are some that have been here the whole time, and we appreciate the work that everybody is doing. If you're tested positive, the things that are going to happen. So you don't have to remember everything we're saying today. We want to provide you a lot of information and checklists to be available for you. The next slide, please. So with keeping safe on campus, there's new responsibilities and expectations. So with the health and safety and well-being of the WPI community top of mind, and in accordance with public health guidelines, WPI is requiring employees to follow safety protocols, including practicing social distancing and wearing face coverings. In the new normal, we're all aware of wearing face coverings, and we don't anticipate this being an issue, but we do want to address a concern that has been brought to us. What if someone's not wearing a face mask? What if they're not following the policy? Well, what's going to be done is if an employee is identified of not wearing a face covering, the employee's supervisor should be notified. It should not be one employee speaking to another employee about the not wearing it. We don't want to put that kind of uncomfortable situation. You would contact the supervisor, so the supervisor would observe it themselves, or someone would tell them. The supervisor then would review the policy with the employee and state expectations that face coverings are expected to be worn at all times unless you're alone in your own personal office space. And then if this continues on, this does become a performance issue. So it's not something we anticipate people are doing because unfortunately this is the new norm, that we know we wear masks when we go into place, and we know we're wearing that mask for someone, which is a great pin I saw earlier. So, you know, work together with this to keep the campus safe. Next slide, please. And the next one, just to show, is the testing. Emily did a great job going all over the testing process, but testing's new. So we do understand that there may be a potential mistest, whether it's the first time you did it or something came up in your life, which certainly happens. If you do miss a test, we do reschedule as soon as possible. you will be notified that a test was missed. And, just a friendly reminder, please reschedule your test. We're hoping within 24 hours you do it. If you actually miss a second test, you will also get notified that you have missed your second test. And if you don't make up the test, within 24 hours, that you will lose access to campus until you're able to retake your test, get a negative result, and get back on campus. And then, if a third one comes, which once again, I don't think is going to happen, we're going to be going through this process, you would end up losing the access to the campus until you took the test and were able to get back on campus. So these are just reminders to say we really stress the importance of keeping the campus safe with a couple of new policies and procedures and how we're going to work through them together. So I think those are the key areas that we've been hearing about at the moment. So.
Thank you, Kristen. That's great. Yeah, and again, look, we don't expect to have huge problems with employee compliance. We know that you all understand the importance of these safety measures, but we do keep getting the questions, so we wanted to answer that. The one I think that we are all more worried about is student compliance, and that is why we've asked Philip Clay to bring it on home for us here and talk a little bit about our students and what we're doing, both carrots and sticks, to encourage their engagement with us in the safe practices that it's going to take for us to keep the campus open. So, Philip, over to you.
All right. On cleanup today. So, thank you very much. So this slide I won't go over in detail because you can see that this information for students is really the exact same for all members of our community. And so when we talk about the WPI Together Pledge and what life is going to be like at WPI, these are the same things that we are all adjusting to. So adjusting our routines, making sure that we're being socially responsible, the hand washing, everything you've been hearing about throughout the course of the town hall this afternoon. And Emily talked a good deal about the testing, so I'm going to not talk about this too much in greater detail. So if I can have the next slide, please. So in thinking about the student culture and trying to adjust students to what our new reality is going to be, if you think about when Eric was talking a little bit about some of the safety precautions, that when you're working with students, there's no one sort of silver bullet that's going to be the secret to creating this culture of safe practices. It's really a blended approach that really is going to be the secret. Now, one of the things that we did this summer was to survey students and ask them just to try to get a handle on what they've been doing thus far in terms of their own practices regarding safety. So facial coverings, these kinds of things. And from the survey results, these were the top things that they responded to. The reason that they've been compliant, being socially distant, wearing facial coverings, is that their number one answer is they think that it's socially responsible. Second highest response was that they don't want to get others sick. And the third response was that they don't want to get sick themselves. And then coming into the number 4 spot is that their parents were making them. But there was actually a pretty big gap between the first 3 and the fourth one. And the reason I share that by way of just framing the device is that we know that our students, we know from the intention survey you saw early in the presentation, they want to come back. They're anxious to come back. And they also already have this altruistic attitude that it's about other people. They understand that this is about all our safety precautions, really about looking out for each other. And that's something we heard loud and clear. And so as we've been thinking over the course of summer about how do we instill this culture with students, that's really been the starting point for a lot of things that we've been developing. So you can see that the first area just has to do with messaging. A lot of the work we've been doing in a lot of the posters and the things that you've been seeing around campus and the message we've been sending to students and parents is about letting them know, number one, what to expect, but also really emphasizing both our policies, but also really a lot of this this social responsibility, and that this sense of we're all in this together and we need to look out for each other. Emily talked a lot about the testing, but a lot of the information, just like we as employees had to complete, that students had to do the same kind of pre-arrival training. So the same segments that we had to go through, students had to go through their own training to know what to expect and what we expect of them. Gompi was here this summer filming informational videos to show students this is what it's going to be like. We just finished last week filming a series of videos on dining and how to navigate that. And so again, this information is what we're putting out to students prior to their arrival. One of the things that we've done in terms of policies is to really overhaul, actually do an addendum to our code of conduct to let students know this is how some of the cultures and some of our policies and how they're changing, what we're really expecting of them. That includes information about social gathering and being in compliance with those both on campus as well as off campus, anything occurring off campus. And obviously the same information you just heard from both Kristen and Emily about testing, that same information has been going out to students about policies. So next slide, please. As I mentioned, a lot of the information we've been getting from students is that really they want to return, but they also have really clearly expressed, the students that we've been speaking to, that they want to take an active role into making sure that their peers are compliant, because they recognize that if their peers aren't, that really represents a great threat to our ability to stay open, their ability to continue to be on campus. And so we've actually, Greg Snoddy, our Dean of Students, has been meeting with a lot of student groups and really trying to connect with them and identify, some of those peer leaders and the influencers within our culture. And so we've been connecting with those students over the course of the summer and really using them to help on that peer enforcement. And as we know that our campus culture, particularly among students, is there's a lot of peer support, but we're trying to use that really to our advantage in the situation to make sure that they are looking out for each other and really confronting each other to make sure that everyone is acting appropriately. Community management, we've talked a lot about this in other throughout this session, but we're using the same techniques really with students that we're using for employees, a lot of the same information, and working finally very closely with clubs and organizations about providing them with a toolkit, because just as we're navigating new ways of campus and having fewer people be able to get together, we need to make sure that we're providing, with our limited space, guidance for student clubs and activities about how do you do your clubs and organizations safely? How are you going to meet? How do you do that in a remote environment? And also the same thing with club sports, because we recognize that there are very specific guidelines, actually very comprehensive guidelines for how athletics is going to work. And a lot of that really has driven the decision for closing the Sports and Rec Center for the time being only to students, because the guidelines that we have in terms of the ability to be able to use that facility safely really greatly reduce the number of people that can be in that facility. And so obviously our priority has to be for students to be able to use that space. And so that's the decision we've made coming out of the gates, certainly something that we will reevaluate over time, but that's part of the reason for that change. Okay, next slide, please. Just very, very quickly. So one of the things you've heard us talk about is to do with de-densification of housing. So two very quick pie charts. This is what our student housing for first year students looked like last year. So you can see that the vast majority of first year students were in triples and quads, equal number of singles and doubles, 7%. But 86% of our first year students were in triple or quads. And then very quickly, the next slide, please. And so this shows you after our de-densification process, which includes renting out the Hampton Inn to put students in, an expansion of what was formerly Salisbury Estates into rebranding that for the WPI townhouses. You'll see that now 82% of our first year students are going to be in double rooms. 13%, and since only 5% of first year students are going in triple rooms. So that's really going to help a lot with the de-densification of housing to create an experience that really promotes and reduces the opportunity for spread, because students are just going to be in a much denser or less dense housing situation. And then finally, last slide very quickly. This is about our visitors and vendors. So actually, Wale sent something out to the community earlier today, trumped this slide, gave really detailed information about our new visitors and vendors policy. And again, this is about recognizing that just as we've been very stringent about who is on campus and who is not on campus in terms of remote and on campus for students, faculty, and staff, we also have to give consideration for anyone coming to visit our campus. And so this is a quick summary of what that policy is. And I won't talk about it in any detail because, again, Wale today sent something out to the community that gave that in great detail. So that's very quickly, knowing that we want to leave time for questions if for my content today. And I think I'm going to turn it back over to Lori.
Yes, thank you, Philip. Thank you. Again, there's so much work behind those slides about what has gone on the student affairs side. I want to thank you and the team so much for that. So look, I'm just going to wrap it up here with one slide, and then we'll get to some of the questions that we haven't answered, although, wow, the question answering team has been on fire answering all your questions. So thank you for that. Look, I think the first question was the right one. These other places have made different decisions, although again, I would argue that only Holy Cross has actually really significantly changed their plans. Assumption just put a pause on their start. They're one of the ones who had moved up their start date. Remember that? Remember 3 months ago when all the universities were like, we're going to start early. And even some people here were saying we should start early. And we made the decision to really kind of stay the course for our start time. I'm so pleased that we did that. Gave us the time to really be confident and ready. So Holy Cross changed. Becker, I think, was always going to be remote, although they hadn't announced it. And again, Assumption has just kind of said, well, maybe we'll start remote for a couple of weeks and then get into it. But again, that's because their students are already here and they're starting to arrive and they're not quite ready to go. So what gives me confidence in our plans? And we actually had this conversation in the CERT meeting, which I think was CERT 45 yesterday. And we talked a lot about why is it that we're all confident, as opposed to, again, I'm talking to literally dozens of presidents every week about what's happening at their institution. And you read in the media about the ones that have flipped. What you don't read about are the dozens of them that are staying the course, which is what we're doing. So we have worked this literally every day for months and months and months, and not just me or the senior team, or not just people on the front lines. It's everybody in every part of this university has been working this, and to the point where, and asking ourselves the hard questions and working to increase our confidence level. There have certainly been days over the last 3 months where we would have all said, oh my gosh, we're not sure we're going to get there. Right now, we are unified and feeling very confident in our plans. We are ready. And the thing that really I lean on in these moments is the fact that we are scientific, analytical, engineering mindset type of thinkers on this campus. And I do think, not that I want to do a big superiority dance to some of our friends and other kinds of institutions, but the fact that we understand the science, that we are talking to experts, both within our faculty and beyond with our medical advisory board. We're making our plans with an engineering mindset. Those of you that are engineers or work with engineers all the time, like I do, on big, nasty, thorny problems, know that it's just about understanding each and every issue and knocking them down one at a time and solving problems even when the perfect answer isn't presented itself. That's what we're good at WPI. This is exactly what we've been doing all summer long. We also aren't in a silo here. Like I said, I am on the phone daily and on Zoom calls, weekly with groups of other presidents. I was talking to other people within the CERT who say they're meeting with their peers and colleagues, whether that's in the residential services area or deans of students or provosts. And it is quite clear in those conversations that we have been ahead of the game from the beginning here, one of the reasons that we are is the way we organized our work, again, being highly collaborative and unsiloed from the beginning. This collaboration that we're doing, the way we're organized, the fact that we have had this sort of emergency response structure really is a best-in-class approach. And I'm more convinced of that than ever as I speak to our colleagues. We don't have all the resources of a BU or a Tufts at our disposal, but the resources we have are the right ones for us. And then the last thing I want to say is, I talked to a lot of people on this campus about trust, and I think that word gets thrown around a lot. And there's certainly people who might say there is a lack of trust in certain parts of this campus. Here's what I will say. I trust this team. I trust the people that are in the Zoom room with me every week on CERT and are working night and day in between that. I trust those of you that are on here asking questions, that you're doing it from a place of really wanting to make us better and wanting to help. And we trust that too, that we're trying to answer those questions so that we can increase your confidence. I know that our faculty, in spite of the uncertainties and the challenges, are going to deliver our educational mission and are going to do that in a way that is consistent with WPI's educational values. Our staff have just bent over backwards to keep serving this community under the most difficult circumstances I can imagine. And even our students, and I think that the big national conversation about students and can we trust them with this responsibility is a fair one. But if I was going to pick any group of students to work with at this moment, I would pick ours. I would pick WPI students. They understand the science. They care deeply about their campus community. They are not party animals for the most part. And they are committed to us like we are committed to them. And so I will trust but verify with them, but I trust that the vast majority of them are really committed to doing the right thing. And we're hearing that from them overwhelmingly. And I also trust that we don't have it perfect. It's not perfect right now. There's going to be hiccups. There's going to be issues, but we are going to learn from them and follow the science and pivot and keep growing our plans and keep making it better. And if we have to pivot to scale back, we will be ready to do that too. We've done it. We know we can, but I know that whatever happens, we will take this on together because we have built the structures, the relationships, and the plans to be able to do that. So I am confident, actually. I'm not sure I would have necessarily thought that a few months ago that I would be sitting here today feeling confident. And whenever I meet with our team, my confidence level increases. I know the things that make us nervous are things that are not about us, that are about things beyond us. But all we can do now is work to control those things we can control and to get as much information as we can about those things that we can't and to share that together and move forward. So I know we've talked for a really long time here. I want to just take a few more minutes of questions. As we wrap this up, I want to really thank the colleagues who shared their information with you. If we don't get to your questions, I promise we will follow up in email. We're recording them all. And we will do that. But again, thank you all so much. And, I would put this team up against anybody to take on a crisis like this. And if it can be done, I think we're the ones to do it. And we're going to learn a lot in these next few weeks. I think the other thing is going to be, one of those things that we're going to learn about is there are going to be positive cases, folks. There are. I wish I could say there aren't. There definitely are. But we put everything we can think of in place to move quickly and manage that. And we will not probably be sharing as much information with you about that as everybody would like, because confidentiality really matters here. but we will share when we have positive tests. We will have a public dashboard. People asked about that. We're not trying to hide anything here. It's just about student and staff and faculty confidentiality that we are not going to be sharing much more specifics. So, but we are ready for that. And I think the first few are going to be tough, but then I think we're going to get into a rhythm here. So thank you all so much. And maybe we can take the slides off and jump into a few questions for the last few minutes. And thank you so much to Kate Beveridge for all your support here on the IT side. And now the queen of the question wrangling, Ms. Kyle Siegel, is going to jump in.
Thanks so much, Lori. We did cover a lot in the Q&A, but especially for those couple hundred folks watching on YouTube, we'll cover a couple of the topics.
Sure.
First, could you talk a little bit about the vendor and visitor policy, and perhaps especially how it relates to the BETC or training programs for external audiences or volunteers coming to campus, and if Greek houses fall under this policy?
Yeah, I'm going to ask maybe either Philip or Sue Sontergrath to jump in and talk a little bit more about that. Philip had that slide, but went through it quickly. I do know we are, for certain corporate partners, we are working hard on making sure that we can continue to work with them. Although I will say, look, guys, to be honest, my goal for a term, can we please just minimize visitors? Just please do everything we can to minimize visitors, because I think we're going to have a lot to deal with ourselves. And so that's my request of each one of you individually, is that you work to do that. But if we need to have them, then we have a process for that. Who wants to take that one?
I could jump in quickly, Lori.
Please.
So basically, we are asking that folks make a determination on their own if a visitor or vendor is essential to the operation of the university and if they have to physically be on campus. So when Lori says as minimal as possible, that's what we're talking about. So all of the details are on the We Are WPI website right now. There is a process to have a visitor or vendor fill out an acknowledgement form before they come to campus, and you also need to log that visitor or vendor, and that is all detailed on the We Are WPI site. In terms of the Greek houses, that did get answered, but basically the Greek houses are expected to follow the student policies, and I'll let Philip kind of jump in there.
I thought you might, Sue. Thank you. Each chapter, because they are privately owned, but what we asked each chapter to do is submit their own reopening plan, which really mirrored the same kinds of criteria that all offices had to do. So talk to us, put a plan together about what are they going to do about testing? What are they going to do about quarantining? How are they going to be feeding students? And what about guests and visitors? And so each chapter house developed their own plan. In most cases, they are not permitting any visitors in. Some chapters, what they did is they're actually going to do socially distant visitors outside under a tent in the chapter to make sure that that they're really controlling the environment in the house. And some chapters are actually even not permitting members who do not live in the house. So some members of the campus not to permitting them in the chapter house, because again, they're trying to control the residential environment in the chapter house much the way that we're trying to do that in the residence halls as well.
Thank you. One follow-up on that, not on Greek houses, but on visitors. What should one do if they see an unaccompanied visitor on campus?
I guess I would say ask if you can help them, direct them. I mean, in some ways, it's sort of like what we do, wearing your mask. But in many ways, it's just sort of like our normal. We'll still have admissions folks, students who are families, because we are an open campus, who may be coming. And just like we normally do in any visitor, if you see someone that looks like they don't know where they're going, you can ask them, can I assist you? And if they're looking for someone or some building, potentially direct them.
Yeah, it really should only be as they're coming from their car to wherever they're going, because other than that, they really should be escorted.
Yeah.
Thank you. Some questions around testing. For employees that will come to campus less than one time per week, how would testing work for them?
So we were just talking about this morning. I feel like we need to put some more clarity around this. So I'm probably not going to answer this just right yet. But I'll tell you my current thinking, Philip, unless you tell me I shouldn't. So I feel like there are essentially two types of employees in the fall. There are those who are going to be on campus pretty darn regularly. They've got shifts, they're working on campus, they're going to be here. And there are those who are basically remote, except for potentially occasionally needing to come to campus. So for those who are coming to campus regularly, you need to be in our testing program, and you're going to be tested at least once a week, at least initially. Like, that's what we're doing. For those of you that are basically remote, except you want to like, oh, but I might occasionally need to come to campus. That occasional need to come to campus is essentially like being a visitor. And so we're gonna get back to you with more detail on those folks. But the expectation is, if you really are not coming to campus regularly, if your thought is, I'm gonna come to campus once every other week or every third week for an hour to grab something out of my office, you're not going to be in our testing program. You're essentially, you should be considered a remote employee. But when you do come, we need to know that you've been here. So that's the process we need to work on. So just give us like a smidgen more time on that one, and we will be getting back to you shortly with more detail on that exact question, because it does seem like there's a lot of people that are worried about that. But here's my request of you. If you are really planning to mostly be remote this A term, be remote. If you need to come to campus on occasion, of course, we can work with you to figure that out. But I'm happy to have people who are working remotely during A term. Again, dedensifying is a key to our success here. So I think that's where we're headed with that. But stay tuned. We were just talking about it some this morning, and we'll be sharing more info on that. And I understand that it's an open question for people. So just hang tight a little bit.
Thank you. A couple other clarifying questions on testing. Do people need to sign a waiver for each test or just once?
Just once. And by the way, just to put a special emphasis on this, it's a waiver, it's got legally language in it, but it's also the way that we get your tests to campus, your test kit. So we really, really need you to sign it. So go do it now. Yes.
How quickly will we get test results?
Within 24 hours, typically. If it starts to get longer than 48, I get worried. But the first 3 days, they've all come. All test results have come within 24 hours of the tests physically getting to the Broad, which right now we're just sending them once a day in the evening. But when we really ramp up, we're going to be sending them twice a day. People who got tested yesterday morning heard yesterday evening. I got tested on Tuesday. I got my result 24 hours later on Wednesday afternoon.
Thank you. A question from a faculty member. Will I know if a student in my class is positive, or will students be notified if a faculty member tests positive?
I want to make sure we get this right. Who has the exact right way to say this? Emily?
You will not be notified if a student tests positive in your class unless you are identified as a close contact. You will be notified that a student will be missing your class and may need some accommodations or flexibility, but to respect that student's privacy, we would not share with you why they would be missing your class. Similarly for folks who have seen those emails before that come from academic advising or health services that says that student's not able to attend class. If a faculty member tests positive, I think same thing. We're going to respect that faculty member's privacy. Unless someone in that class is identified as a close contact, they might be notified. But otherwise, the department would be working to, either whether class is canceled or providing another instructor to make up that work. But that would not be disclosed to the class because we want to respect folks' privacy in those environments. Yes. Did I hopefully covered everything we wanted to cover there? Okay.
Good answer. It is absolutely not the intent for word to spread widely about people who test positive. Not very many people will know who those people are. The rumor mill you can never account for, but yes.
Thank you. Should employees who are working remotely or who are in Pathway 4 still fill out the daily symptom tracker?
I don't know the answer to that one. I thought that was a really good question.
Yeah, I can answer that. So if you are fully remote, you do not need to fill out the symptom tracker. But if you are coming to campus, so for example, I come to campus right now every day but Thursday. And on Thursdays, I work from my office, my office at my house. And so if I start to exhibit symptoms on Thursday, I should be reporting it to WPI because I was on campus on Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday. And so if you're working on campus at all, you should do it every day. even if you happen to be working from home that particular day. But if you are fully remote, you do not need to do it.
Perfect.
Okay, thank you. I think one more question around questions. There are some questions from faculty around face masks. Are masks required if teaching behind a plexiglass shield?
Yeah. Okay, so I saw that Art and John were typing answers there. And look, we've had a specific conversation about this with our medical advisory board, with Dr. Walensky and Dr. Collins and others. And you really should wear a mask in a classroom. When you are speaking, that is one of the dangerous things, right? And so it's really much better for you to wear a mask. I cannot say that I can't say that that is the rule that we wrote down somewhere, but it is really much better. It's not easy, I'll tell you that. I mean, we will have amplification so you don't have to shout, right? We'll have microphones and things. And I do understand the concern about students who have hearing challenges. And I know that we are working that. I don't know how many such students we have, but Emily or Philip, do you want to add anything about student accommodation in that case? Could we have sign language interpreters, for example, is one way to deal with that?
I don't have a specific answer to that. I know that Amy Curran, our Director of Accessibility Services, works with any student that needs particular accommodation. So that may be an area where, particularly if a student is hearing impaired and needs to be able to, read lips in order to do anything, then that will be an accommodation that we'll need to navigate. But I know she's aware of it and actively working that issue. She does with all student accommodation needs.
Right. But all the classrooms do have plexiglass. If you did that and a face shield, am I going to say that's absolutely forbidden? I am not going to say that. But I think masks are better, especially initially, if at all possible. Again, we're trying to kind of get the community in, have us be settled, and that would be much better if you possibly could.
Great, thank you. Just since we're over time, do you just want to mention briefly about the data dashboard and maybe any triggers for campus shutdown?
Yeah, so again, we will have a public data dashboard. I urge you to go look at UMass Medical School. It'll be something pretty simple like that. How many tests have we performed? How many positives have we had? Obviously, we'll be looking at more detailed data behind the scenes, but as well, and learning as we go there. And then we have put together several different phases for a phased close down. Remember, we kind of did a phased close down in March. Right now we'll be in the sort of tech flex mode with people on campus and flexible stuff. We could imagine doing a sort of 2-week shelter in place. So not sending students home, but saying, we're going to go the vast majority of courses online for 2 weeks and have people essentially self-quarantine if we were having an outbreak. And again, we're working on the triggers for those. But yes, it'll be things like what you're hearing at the state level about percentage of positive cases and things like that. And then if things continue to get worse, then we would also look at, again, triggering going back to a more remote status, not a full shutdown necessarily. That would be the 4th level. So anyway, it's a little hard to explain, but I promise in our next town hall or even maybe before, I will share with you a slide that summarizes this. It turns out to be a challenge to really do this smartly and think through all the scenarios in the abstract, but we want to at least, and by the way, I don't think it's perfect. So I think it's going to take judgment in the moment as well. And we're putting together our processes to make sure that we're, especially initially on a daily basis, checking in to make sure that we're doing well against our metrics. So share more with you on that in the coming week or two. And I do think we'll probably do one more town hall before classes start. So that's about 2 weeks from now. Where we can check back in once we've got a lot more students and a lot more of you back on campus. So Until then, I wish everybody well, and I really thank you for participating. For those of you that didn't have your questions answered, we will take them offline and get you answers. And we'll keep talking. Thank you for expressing your concerns and asking your questions, and I hope we were able to address a lot of them today. And thanks again to the panel and to our fabulous question answerers behind the scenes as well. And Kyle and Kate, thank you to both of you for your support.